Stamford Bridge, Chelsea hosting Manchester City, a Chelsea team that at times we've seen some progress and other times I think we've all been a bit frustrated against a Manchester City team that look like they're starting to get into gear as we know they kick on. It ended 4-4. Give me your biggest takeaway for Chelsea, because I think that they become a bit of a story really, 4-4 with the reigning champions.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk around the game was, well, he only beat Tottenham because of the sendings offs, which might be true.
Yeah.
But they took a lot of positives from it, and I think going into the game, it probably suits them playing one of the top teams, Manchester City, where they're going to attack them, they're going to come out against them.
Yeah.
I think they struggle against the teams that sit a little bit deep and they find that difficult to break down. So the game sort of played into the hands. However, you're going to get punished against Manchester City if you're not on your best game.
Yeah.
The penalty early on or in the first half, and it could have set them back. They could have felt sorry for them, sorry for themselves, got into the shells. But I just thought the response from the Chelsea players was very positive. I think during the game, what you saw was at times Chelsea at the brilliant best, but at times you also saw Chelsea at the most vulnerable as well.
Vulnerable. Yeah,
and I think that's just where Chelsea are at the moment. I think they're just on this path where they're just a little bit up and down. Yeah. And I think what Mauricio Pochettino is looking for is almost that flat line and then a slower trajectory just to evolve and to get better.
It's interesting because on the podcast I've said to Musty a few times, he keeps saying about Chelsea, and I keep giving him the sign. Two-year process for me, mate. It's a 2 year, and I know that seems long, and I know people will say, well, he's got to get things right and the amount of money they've spent. But we're talking about young players, some in the early 20s, some this is their first Premier League season campaign, what they're going through things. So I think going through some difficult times is never a bad thing, because we both know in football, sometimes it's from those moments that you learn, that you get better, that you get your experience. It was really interesting, though, because before the weekend, and I'm doing my notes for the match, and I start looking through the Chelsea team, and I know in some respects, and Musty always corrects me on this, but he keeps saying it's players with potential, you know, your Mudryks and your Jacksons and your Enzos and your Caicedos. He said we don't totally know what we're going to get from them yet, but I looked through the team, Steve, and I'm kind of looking, thinking he's talented, he's got good technical ability, and it started to make me think that there should be times in a game when Chelsea can have possession of the ball, when Chelsea can dictate a bit to Manchester City, as good as Manchester City are. I said, when I look at the two sets of teams, of course City are better, and of course City have won, but the bigger things for me with that City have are maturity, experience, know-how. They know what they're doing. This Chelsea team have got none of that at the moment, but they've got talent.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way to start to get some of the maturity, and I thought it was a mature performance today, I think that's when we'll start to see the Chelsea that Poch wants, the Chelsea that the fans want, and the Chelsea that the ownership have spent this kind of money for.
Yeah, I think there's only a handful of players within the squad who've probably won majors. When you look at it and you go Thiago Silva, Raheem Sterling, Cole Palmer to a certain degree is being in and around the changing room, but he's still young in football in terms of what he does on a pitch. And I completely agree. I think that game management is key to them, and I think it's something that Pochettino is very, very aware of, is that they have to get better. That the game that strikes me is the Arsenal game. 2-0 up and you're cruising in the game. It's the best we've seen them play in a long time, albeit Arsenal, were they not at the best because of Chelsea's performance, or was it just an off day? But then the mistakes creep in and then they fold, and that's the problem, is like you can't fold. It's almost, you've got to brush the first mistake off and say, okay, don't worry about it, we're better than that, we can get over it. But I think that's just where Chelsea are at the moment. But I find Chelsea very interesting in the fact of the old Chelsea regime of winning trophies year after year and has gone. There's a new ownership in town. So for me, it's almost like Chelsea's a new club. They're in a massive transitional period where you've got now owners who are new to football, who don't quite understand it fully. They're learning on the job. They've made huge mistakes. I think by bringing Mauricio Pochettino in, they've made a big addition to it, and I think it's a big plus what they've done in bringing him in. So I totally agree with you. I'd even stretch it longer than 2 years, the project, because I think the club had gone that far behind after Abramovich left, with the mistakes of what Todd Boehly made. Even that position of when Abramovich was sort of under investigation, the club slipped behind a year straight away, maybe longer, with what was going on at the club. So I do think it's a long process, and it's going to be a long ride for them.
I want to talk about some individuals and then maybe just turn attention on Manchester City. But before I do, I just wanted to run one, again, a bit of a theory past you in terms of, and obviously your links and knowing Liverpool Football Club well, that I sometimes feel in football and at certain football clubs, your history, a winning history from the past, can be a burden.
Oh yeah.
I used to feel it at Liverpool, and obviously the one trophy, the one title that Jurgen Klopp is helping to address that, and the football that he's playing now is getting Liverpool back to where they were. Manchester United, I think it's evident now. We always harking back to the time. Chelsea, we kind of keep on talking about the winning and that mentality and the titles and the Mourinhos and the Ancelottis and the Contes, and which isn't necessarily helpful. That's one point that I'd love to get your thought on. And the second is, and this one's a little bit more difficult to how would I best explain it? I've always felt at certain clubs, big clubs with that history, that winning history from the past, there's sometimes an element, small element around clubs who don't want current success because it actually dims the successes of the past.
Yeah.
And it's a really difficult thing to try and say. But sometimes you either see it, you feel it, that there's an era where that was the golden era back in the day, and this is nowhere near as good, and they'll never be as good. And I don't know. You were at Liverpool; they had many years, and I'm not saying that these loads of individuals or whatever who always hark back to those days, but do you understand the point I'm making?
Oh, 100%, yeah, I do.
At times, at clubs, everybody's got to be pulling, and sometimes there can be one or two bad eggs in there who actually are hankering for those past days because that was their glory time.
Yeah, I think your first point, obviously, that the pressures of being at a club and to win titles is there. The only thing I'd say about that is, and this is, I totally agree with you on that, from a player's point of view, you can't think about that. This is your era. This is your time to make history. I think a lot of the time it's fans, it's the media who put that pressure on the players. But actually, from within the change room, me and you wouldn't sit there in the changing room and say, "God, we need to win this. We need to get ourselves in these history books and match them."
Yeah, we're not thinking
We'd
about it.
We'd like to, but that's just, well, if we do things right day to day, that'll come naturally and that'll happen. If we're coached in the right way, managed in the right way, if the right players are brought through the door, well, that'll all take care of itself naturally. The more pressure you put on yourself, the more you seize up, you become less of a player, and you play limited in the way that you play. I think what was very interesting, and I can talk about this because I know it firsthand, is when Jurgen Klopp took over, the one thing he did was he embraced the history of the club, and he wanted the former players and the ex-players to be in and around and tell their stories about winning titles and winning cups and what the mentality was like and how they thought about games, because he thought that was vitally important. If I wanted to be a tennis player, I wouldn't go to you and ask how to become a tennis player.
Okay,
because you don't.
Cheers.
Yeah, but you don't know it, do you?
No,
if I wanted to become a doctor, I wouldn't go and say, "Well, Robbie, what do I do to become a doctor?" If I want to become a winner and get a winner's mentality, I go and speak to winners and I ask them questions and I feed off them and I get that. But what you've got to get is you've got to get the right type of winners within the change room who want the club to continue to be winners and to be spoken about in the right way. And I think that's what Liverpool did. I know it's like what other clubs are doing now, that they're drawing on the past and saying to them, no, embrace that past and use it to gear you and fill you to or fuel you to be successful.
Let's just focus on a couple of Chelsea players, and then we'll turn to Manchester City, because obviously they played their part in a brilliant game just before the international break. Cole Palmer, we made a bit about him before the game. We talked about him before kick-off. We mentioned him after. I mean, did he look like a man on a mission, a man trying to prove a point? I mean, he took the penalty so coolly with all the pressures on him. That's 4 penalties, 4 conversions, and doesn't look a problem. Did him and Raheem Sterling, who's the other, I would say, who were former players, I thought it was probably one of the best games I've seen Sterling play in the blue of Chelsea.
I thought he was brilliant. I really do. Going back to Cole Palmer, we bigged him up and he delivered. And that's the great thing. But I think when you're a bit part player at a club and suddenly you get that platform to play week in, week out, your mentality changes completely on the training ground, around the changing room. Suddenly, when you've got the trust of a manager who brings you in, you mentioned it on the show where you said about being an academy player is different from being bought. When you get bought, suddenly you're the manager's choice, you're the club's choice. They want you. That makes you feel 10 foot tall. You feel so important, and that you're there for a purpose. Whereas when you're coming through the academy, you're just a product of the academy, and let's see where he gets to, and let's see how he does. So I think you could see that, or you can certainly see it from the performances that he's put in for Chelsea so far, that he's thriving in that environment and showcases what his sort of his attributes are. I spoke about it on the show about Jason Wilcox, talking about his mentality and how he developed and how strong mentally he is. We saw that in the penalty, going up against your former club, right at the end of the game.
And Edison, one of the top goalkeepers in the league.
Exactly, and he looked so comfortable, didn't he? He looked so calm. So that shows his qualities. And I think Raheem Sterling's got a point to prove to a lot of people. Leaving Manchester City, any step from there would have been a downgrade. And he goes to Chelsea, but he's got something to prove because he wants to get back in the England squad. He wants to show to Manchester City why they shouldn't have sold him, why they should have kept him. And I thought he was outstanding today. He's coming for a little bit of criticism at times, but I think this season, we listened to him in America in the summer series where he talked about my diet was wrong last year. It takes a lot for someone to admit that and to
when
come
you're
out and
that
go,
successful as well,
yeah, exactly, and go, I tried something,
something,
it didn't work, and now I've got back to what I am. And look at my performances.
I thought it was a great moment when he scored, because he kind of started to celebrate, then didn't, and then saw his mates. I thought it was a brilliant moment. Just tells you what was going on inside. From City's point of view, let's turn it. Pep talked after about actually being pleased with the point. I think Pep, and I heard him in his press conference before the game started. Actually, I think he sees the potential in what Pochettino has, the potential in the group, and said this isn't going to be an easy fixture. Anybody who thinks come to Stamford Bridge, I think he's known in the past what it's like. I think he knows the crowd are up for it, the players are up for it, and in the end it's probably a good point for Man City in the end.
Yeah, I think he'd have probably took it before the game, going to Chelsea, having been 4-3 ahead so late on. That'll be sort of sat in his mind thinking, well, we should have saw that one out. However, we've seen Chelsea against Liverpool this season, and Liverpool dominated the first half, but then Chelsea were magnificent in the second half and really dominated possession. The Arsenal game for 77 minutes before Declan Rice scores that goal. Arsenal are well and truly played off the park by Chelsea, who were brilliant on the day. So he knew, watching those videos, and I go back to the styles of playing against Chelsea. It suits Chelsea to play a Manchester City, a Liverpool or an Arsenal who come onto them, who want to hem them back in, and then they can counter-attack. So I thought his interview was refreshing, actually, because usually he's so uptight and a bit moans, and he just said, which is exactly what we were thinking, what an advert for the Premier League. Yeah,
absolutely. And it wasn't a great day, I don't think, for too many of the City players. A couple of points I made after the game. I thought they missed John Stones. I think how important he's become. Not just his defending and his organisation. Now when he steps into midfield, gives them the overload. He understands his role, where he's passing, how he can get it into the attacking third. I thought they missed that. I thought Rodri at times got a little bit drawn around the pitch. He missed a couple of the challenges he normally makes. One player I think we'd probably overlook again, and we shouldn't, is Earle Haaland, who's got 13 Premier League goals, which is incredible in 12 Premier League games, on a season when people are saying, oh, he's not quite the same, and comparing him to last year. I mean, whatever happens, what an incredible potential, because he's still, I think he's 23 at the moment, incredible potential that this guy's got, and a hunger to be in the right place, to get goals, some fortune, I think, in the penalty, and we should actually just quickly discuss that. But Earle Haaland is a gift for the Premier League.
Oh, absolutely. And we want the best players within the Premier League. I think we were all worried he might go to La Liga, but we were fortunate that he came to Manchester City and to the Premier League. The one thing I remember listening to a story about him, I read it, and it was talking about his dad would often catch him watching videos of him missing opportunities, and he was like, why are you watching those ones? And he was like, because I want to learn why I missed them and how to get better at them, whether I need to be quicker with my touch, whether my movement needs to be a bit different. So it's almost that perfectionist in him and that drive and that hunger to just keep breaking records, to keep scoring goals. You can see the joy he gets out of the tapping or any type of goal.
Same thing.
Everything means the same to him. That is what he is there to do. I think the other side of it, I think he is his all-round game's getting better, his link-up play. It's taken him a while to get to that, but like you say, he's young. He is still quite raw.
Yeah.
In the respect of holding the ball up and bringing others into play, that game intelligent, that experience that you do get when you get older to play a certain style. But I just love his hunger to score goals. It's a defender's worst nightmare, isn't it? When you see him sort of bearing down on you, that power that he's got in around the penalty area, that upper body strength, and then how clinical he is.
Let's just clean up that VAR and the penalty as well, because we were in studio, we saw it. I think we both sort of looked at it a couple of times, thought, I'm not quite sure about it, and then we saw a couple of replays, and I think we both felt that Earle and Haaland instigated the grab on Cucurella. Cucurella reacts by grabbing back, and then as the ball's coming in, there's an isolated shot of Cucurella with his arms around Haaland, who goes down. I didn't think it was a penalty. I don't think you thought it was a penalty in the end. And I'm just glad that we're not talking about VAR. The game went on beyond there, and fortunately, it didn't become the most, the talking point if it was a 1-0 win, say, to City. And I just felt on that one, it was almost like I felt the referee Anthony Taylor didn't need to give anything, and then we'll go to VAR, have a look at it and see. But I think by giving it, it's then never going to be deemed a clear and obvious error. And that was one of those I felt today with 20 minutes on the clock. I thought, what a great game we set up. Chelsea had started well. They were causing problems in the wide areas and doubling up, and Doku and James was a great play out. And then I almost felt like VAR wanted to inject itself in the game. Let's have a VAR. That's 20 minutes of good football. Now let's have a VAR. I just felt it didn't need to get involved.
No, I do a show at home called Ref Watch with former Premier League referee Dermot Gallagher. And it's something that I said when we were looking at the goals was sometimes the best thing is to do nothing because it could go either way. And don't influence it, just let it ride out. And after the game, we'd have all looked at it and gone, I've seen them given. You could see it going the other way as well. So maybe the best thing is sometimes is to do nothing. But I agree with VAR. They look to intervene at every opportunity. Even the Haaland goal when he scores, and they're looking for a handball, and you're thinking, please, come on, let's not talk about it. I mean, the one thing I thought this weekend coming into the studio was, let's hope we don't get any major VAR controversies.
We all do, don't we, football fans? We want to see the game play and play out.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.